Hello and a very warm welcome to the penultimate Horse Welfare Wednesday webinar for 2023-2024 season. You're kindly joining us by Zoom, and very shortly we'll be joined by the Facebook Live followers, and we'll be able to get going properly. So I'm delighted that we're talking today about the day in the life of a sports horse, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's joining us also by Facebook Live to the penultimate World Horse Welfare Wednesday webinar on the day in the life of the sports horse. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Sam Griffiths and Richard Davison. For those of you who've joined us before, you'll very much know the score. If you're joining us by Zoom, then you'll be able to interact with questions through the Q&A function. By all means, use the chat function as well, but please, in the main, use the Q&A function for your questions. It's really helpful. And if you're joining us on Facebook Live, then please use put your question in the comments, and we'll transfer them across to Zoom. As I say, this is the penultimate webinar of this series. Our final webinar is in April. I think it's on the 10th of April, and there we will be looking at the latest evidence in relation to equine grass sickness, that hideous disease, with a team of really experienced people at the University of Edinburgh and the Morden Research Institute, supported by the Equine Grass Sickness Fund. And for those who joined us before, you'll know that every single one of our webinars dating back to 2020 is available on our YouTube education channel, and we'll put the link up for that. And so please do register in future on Zoom, because we're going to use a poll question in a very short time, and you'll be able to use the Zoom function to be able to join with that. Now, as I say, it's the penultimate one, but we will be going again in the autumn or winter of this year. It's a long time away. That's obviously for the Northern Hemisphere. And so we'd love to know what you think we should be covering in future webinars. So if you've got any thoughts about what we should be covering on future webinars, then please do email us on education@worldhorsewelfare.org. Now, I doubt I need to introduce you to either of our panelists this evening, Sam Griffiths and Richard Davison, but I will introduce them properly in a second. But this evening, or today, we're talking about a day in the life of a sports horse. And I'm now going to share my screen, and hopefully I can do that. So that's where we are, a day in the life of a sports horse. And we want to kick off with a poll question. So, as I say, if you're on Zoom, you'll be able to respond to this. Do you own, ride, and or manage a sport horse? And there's different options here, and you can tick as many as are relevant to you. So, yes, I own a sport horse. Yes, I ride a sport horse. Yes, I manage a sport horse, daily care. Or no, I don't ride or manage any sport horses. This is just get a feel for who's joining us this evening. So whilst you're answering that, I'm delighted to introduce Sam Griffiths, who many of you will know, a wonderfully successful Australian three-day eventer who's based in the UK, previous badminton winner, two-time Olympian, achieving a bronze medal at the Rio Olympics in 2016. Possibly somewhat more controversially, he's currently head coach for the New Zealand eventing team. And when I asked Sam just now, I said, was that controversial? He said, I got a lot of guidance from my Australian friends when I took the job on, and I'd love to know what that kind of guidance is. But they're obviously heading, like so many other teams, are heading to the Paris Olympics this summer. And I have to say, looking at Versailles, it just looks absolutely stunning. It will be quite a location for the Equestrian Olympics this year. When I asked Sam what a quirky story about him, something I might not know, he's a very keen cricketer, which I should have known because he's Australian. And he even toured England as part of an Australian schoolboy tour before his passion for horses took over. It doesn't record here, though, whether he won or lost when he was on his tour of England, but I'm sure he'll tell us in a minute, and I can imagine that he won. And also joining Sam is Richard Davison, also a hugely successful dressage rider, four-time Olympian and multiple medalist at different global championships, fellow of the British Horse Society, as well as a visiting fellow for Nottingham Trent University. and along with his wife Jill and his sons Tom and Joe, runs a hugely successful international show jumping and dressage stables in Staffordshire. What this doesn't tell you, of course, is that most significantly of all, he's also a trustee of World Horse Welfare. And I can confirm this when I asked Richard about something that people might not know about him. He's doing the final year of a master's course in sports law and practice at Liverpool's John Moore University. And when I saw Richard the other day, in his kitchen was a very large textbook of sports law, and it looked quite well thumbed. So it looked like he's working hard. And also in his spare time, he trains his sheepdogs, Sweep and Molly. So one man and his two dogs, as opposed to one man and his dog. So that is Richard and Sam. So I'm delighted that they're joining us. Now, during this evening, we're talking about a day in the life of the sports horse, and with a format. Sorry, I should have covered this earlier. The format is that after this brief introduction, then we're going to go into some structured questions and answers with Sam and Richard. And the terms ethics and welfare come up during those structured questions. And then we will go into open Q&A, and that's where all of you come in to hopefully send through your questions either on Facebook or on Zoom. And what we thought it would be helpful just to sort of give an understanding of what we mean by ethics and welfare. So ethics is really about answering the question, should I do something? We can do lots of stuff in life. Ethics asks you whether you should be doing. So it depends on our own personal or professional moral values. And these values can be informed by science, but ultimately it's a moral decision and not a scientific one. So very simplistically, ethical, it's okay to do in your view and or society's view, and unethical, it's not okay to do in your view or wider in society or elsewhere. And then welfare is literally about an animal's perception of their experiences, both on their physical and mental state at any one point in time. And so it can be positive or negative. But obviously, we should only be considering the welfare consequences of something if we have made the initial decision that it's ethical to do it. So if we believe it's ethical to use horses or involve horses in sport, how can we make sure that we optimize their welfare? So is it okay to do this? That's the ethical question. And if it's no, you don't do it. And if it is okay to do, then you think, how can I optimize my horse's physical and mental welfare? And in doing that, you're going to base that plan on science, evidence, experience, and assessment of impact. So I hope that is helpful. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen. And before we kick in, Basil, are you going to give us the result of our poll? I normally always forget the poll. Look at that. What a wonderful sort of cross section. So just over half don't own, ride or manage any sport horses, but the other half have a spread of whether they're managing and caring or riding or owning one. And actually nearly half of you own one too. So that's great. Thank you for answering that poll. Basil's asked you where everyone's come from, and I'll look for that in a second, but I can already see that we're on a global audience, including Spain, South Africa, and Romania, as well as across the UK and France. So great to see you. Good evening, Sam.
Good evening.
Great
Thank
to
you
see
for
you.
thank you for having me.
Not at all. It's delighted to have you. And good evening, Richard.
Well, good evening, Roly and everybody, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Not at all. So we'll get going. Sam, can you just talk us through the average day of one or two of your horses?
Yes. So I have quite a structured routine, and I think a routine for the horses is really, really important. So horses are, in a way, like people, love a routine, and what that means for me is that simple things like feeding them at the same time every day, turning them out the same time of the day, and riding them at a similar time of day. And from that structure, I think it keeps the horses happy and they understand what they're doing. So sort of a normal routine for my yard. And being based in the UK, I'm in Dorset at the moment. And for those of you outside the UK, it's incredibly wet here at the moment. So unfortunately, I have to stable my horses pretty much the whole time. And so at this stage, my horses get fed at sort of early in the morning and obviously mucked out. And then I'll start riding them fairly early in the morning, sort of say 9-ish. I'm also lucky enough to have a horse walker. So horses are animals, they're grazing animals, and so movement's a big part of their life. And so some will go on the walker before I ride them, and then obviously ride them. And in the training, because I'm a 3-day eventer, our training is quite varied. So quite often they'll do quite a bit of hacking around the roads in the UK. Obviously some dressage schooling and jumps training. And so each horse will have its own program that we're getting the horses ready for events, but their work is really varied, actually. So I think that keeps it interesting for the horses. But being from Australia, I'm all for the horses living out as much as they can. So my routine does change into the summer. And so then when I can, I'll have my horses live out as much as they can. And in that case, they'd be fed in the field and then would bring them in to work them. And again, the routine would stay the same, as in that they have a very varied work program. So, but for me, the key is to have a structure for the horses, particularly around the feed times. Horses love being fed at the same time, and I always had a policy that my horses were always fed at the same time in the evening in the stables, even if we're still quite busy in the stables, let's say preparing for an event or the day had just run late. So for me, keeping a feed routine is really key. And then also part of that feeding routine is I always give my horses a lot of hay, quite a lot of ab lib hay on the ground, on the floor in the stables. And, you know, I'm a big believer in that. And so then the horses can just sort of, you know, search through the hay and have a nibble, and it keeps them occupied. So essentially that would be my daily routine. Brilliant.
And I love that, you know, that structure, but providing a variety within that structure, as much turnout as possible. That's grand. Thank you, Sam. Richard, how would that vary much for you?
No, very similar actually, and actually I think that's an interesting point. I mean, you know, Sam's horses are event horses, or at least that's the role that they serve for him, and ours are dressage and jumping horses, and it doesn't really matter what discipline you use your horse for, or even if you use it for hacking or a companion animal, the basic requirements of the horse, as Sam has just outlined, especially about the feed routine, remain exactly the same, and the need for turnout. We're a bit luckier, I think, Sam, than you, in terms of we've got quite well drained soil here, so we actually do turn out all the year round. The other thing I have to say is we've got a very long-suffering farrier who is used to getting calls in this time of year with the deep going that the horse has pulled a shoe off, because that's very important if you're going to turn out your horses all the year round. But like you, Sam, you know, I love it when we can get basically all our horses out at summer, and all our stables are empty. I love going around there because they're all out in the field, and so you know that's a very similar program to yourself. I have to say, when you mentioned about the hay, I think there's nothing better when they are in at night, you know, during the winter, that when the yard is finished, ours has to be finished at 5 o'clock. I'll talk about that in a minute. To go in there myself and just listen to the sound of horses munching hay. It's fantastic. It's just a single sound, but it's lovely. There's a sort of chorus of hay munching. But just to finish with, like I'm sure everybody listening, our routine obviously has changed over the years, because we've been doing this for a long time now. and it has to take account of the human side of working hours, and the human welfare, you might say, not just the horses. So years ago, we used to start very early, and to be honest, when I was young and working, employed by somebody, we used to finish really late. Those days have gone now, and so we start at 8 and we finish at 5, and we want our staff to have an hour's lunch. We want to have a coffee break in the morning and all the rest of it, because it's really important. It's a hard job looking after horses and caring for horses, and it's important, and it's physically hard, so it's important that we look after them so they can look after the horses.
Yeah. That's really interesting, to balance between the needs of the horses and as you say, the needs of the people, and it's not just what the law is; it's actually just providing for our teams in the best possible way. Because as you say, Richard, it's a hard job, isn't it? It can be very arduous.
Yeah.
Just picking up what you said there, Sam. I mean, I think the challenges of wet weather, or extreme weather, very dry, very wet. I think that's something we're just going to have to become better at being able to manage, aren't we?
Yeah, very much so. The UK at the moment just seems wetter than ever, and so we have to adjust. And for those of you who don't know, that if we did turn the horses out this time of year, the mud would be right up, over their fetlocks. And then we have the challenge of when the season does turn, that the ground then becomes very poached. And if we don't care for our fields, it's left with huge ruts and then almost unsafe to turn horses out because risk of injuring them. So, like we say, I'd love to turn them out as much as we can, but practically we just can't.
Yeah, no, fine. Brilliant. Richard, then, what management, obviously we've touched on this already, but just to try and drill into it in a bit more detail, what management strategy do you use to maintain your horse's health and welfare?
Okay, well, I think just going back to the start, Sam talked about, feeding the horses and all the rest of the morning. We call that the morning stables. So the day is structured around morning stables, lunchtime stables, afternoon stables. But that isn't just about tasks. So the obvious thing is you feed your horses in the morning and with the hard feed and the hay, and then you muck them out. And I'm sure everybody has that same routine. It's not just about that. It's about observation. So it's embedded in us because we've been doing it for such a long time, but we want our staff to not just put the feed in the manger, but to look at the horse, check the horse over. I don't mean at this point, because it's very busy time for us. I'm not talking about running hands down legs, but looking for anything that hits you, in the face, that the horse is off colour or not normal, or that he's been rolling a lot in his bed more than normal. Or if you have water buckets, whether the horse has drunk anything or even finished the night hay. So observation is the first thing. And really, I would say that is the key thing. And I have to say, we've got a really good team of staff. We always have had, but they're really good. We have a WhatsApp group, and any observation now, thanks to WhatsApp, it's very easy for everybody to be involved with that, and they're very good at putting that on there, and it alerts us to whether we need to review that and look further or not. But I would say that's the key thing that goes on the whole day, including after work as well. And that's when the horse's legs are checked, when they're tucking them up. Everybody whoever's tucking them up checks their legs. Again, any filling or any heat or anything is put straight away onto the WhatsApp group, unless the rider is standing sort of right by there and it's reported directly to them. But likewise afterwards. So the observation and communication of the observation, I would say, is key.
Brilliant. Sam, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and so I've had a similar system. Quite often that is when you see a horse day to day, sometimes you might not notice a drop in condition or something like that. So I always had a once a week where I'd got all the horses out and stood them outside gave them a trot, felt their legs, and so we could then make any adjustment. And I always found that really beneficial. And you know, like we're saying, that, you know, having key people helping us is really essential to the job. And I find that people that work in the horse industry, because it is hard work and not usually very good pay, that people do it for the love of the sport and the love of the horses. So it's just making people aware so they understand and communicate that. So it's very good. Yeah, it's really important to have caring staff, of which most people are.
And just picking up on that, Sam, I mean, obviously we hear a lot about the challenges of getting staff and getting good staff. I mean, is that something that you found challenging over the years, and is it getting worse, or is that something that you've been able to manage pretty well?
Yeah, no, staff is always challenging, and one of the challenges is it's such physical work. And you know, as I was saying, my horses are stabled, and so they need to be mucked out every day, and it's quite, you know, really physical work. And whereas riding the horse can be and competing the horses can be the enjoyable part, but you always have the hard slog. And so yeah, it's nothing that technology could take over and make the job easier. I think it will always be a hard slog. And so yeah, one of the challenges is finding people that actually enjoy the hard slogs to get the rewards. So yeah, it's difficult at times.
Yes, I don't think this is a solution for AI to come up with, is because horses will still need feeding and working at the weekends.
Yeah.
And Richard, how's that for you? I mean, is you've talked about how, you know, WhatsApp and technology can support what you do, but the people are obviously critical. How challenging is that for you?
Yes, well, I mean, we're really lucky because we have a number of what were full-time staff have got married and moved to, you know, got families, but they come in as part-time. And actually, picking up on what Sam was saying, that is really useful because, I mean, they've been, some of them have been working for us about 20 or 30 years. I've forgotten how long, some of them, but they come in and they will see something different to those of us that see the horses every day, and they'll say, oh, that one's, you know, losing a bit of condition, or that one's really fat, isn't it? And I think that sort of a bit of an outside audit is really helpful actually there. Yeah, I mean, obviously getting staff no, I should say getting, you know, really motivated and good staff. I think we've all had to change our practices, and I think, you know, it's about trying to keep the engagement, keeping everybody involved. Small things. I mean, I have a ban on the word swelling, so nobody's allowed to say, oh, such and such has got a swelling on this fetlock or whatever. You have to use the word inflammation, and the reason, it might sound a bit sort of anal, that, but I think it just alerts you, okay, what is inflammation? What does it signal to us? What does it tell us to just put on the red lights on there? How are we going to manage it? And what are the structures underneath? So instead of saying it's got a lump on its leg, we need a bit more detail in that. And I think, you know, our farrier is very good. I actually just realised I've got sitting right in my office, Steve, I know I've got to give you this back. You know, he's got all these kind of little things. I don't know whether you can see that. This is his. That he explains to people, you know, what is going on underneath the skin. And I think if you get involved with that, it really helps, you know, your interest to carry on learning about the horse. And it's not about mucking out a sweep of the yard. Actually, if anybody's listening and anybody can work out how to get the horses mucked out actually by AI or any other non-human way, yeah, you're going to make a fortune, but please tell me first, because I'd like to be in on it.
Thank you, Richard. So yeah, obviously people, in terms of giving our horses a good day life in their day, the people we have working with us and involved with us, it's so important. So Sam, if I can, yeah, obviously when we use horses, you know, horses were sort of free living animals. We've domesticated them, and now we use them for horse sport. And so there's always an element of compromise of in relation to the animal's welfare. And so, how do you minimise the negative experiences your horses may experience, because they've got a job to do as an event horse?
Yeah, so as we've already discussed, is we try and create a routine to make the horses as comfortable as they can and enjoy themselves. But I'd also have to say that I can genuinely feel that my horses love working. They love doing something, and I do know that if we're, for any reason, let's say it's snowed or something, and I can't get to my arena. You can almost see the horses getting frustrated that they haven't done their job that day. So I do find the horses really enjoy having a purpose. So if we combine that with keeping them healthy and as happy as they are, then in the stable or out in the field, that the horses will perform well and are much happier for it. So. For me, part of it is the horses really enjoy their jobs.
Brilliant. So you talk about health and happiness there, and it would be good to return to what we mean by happiness in a second. Richard, for you, how do you minimise your job? Your horse as a jumper or a dressage has got a job to do. How do you minimise those potential negative experiences?
Well, I think first of all, by having respect for every day. I mean, I've been doing this for many, many years, and there isn't a day that goes past as I don't marvel at a horse when I'm riding it or even handling it in the stable. But when it figures out a flying change or to learn to do a bit of an extended trot or all these sort of things, I think it's absolutely amazing and fascinating. And I think I respect that they are so compliant as a species, as an animal. And I remind myself, if you go back hundreds of years, horses were like any other sort of beast of burden. You might think I'm going a little bit off left field here, but bear with me. So, they were, along with the oxen and the camels and perhaps even some elephants, and that's what they did. They transported people and things and pulled carts and went to the battle and did all those sort of things. I mean, even going into battle, how terrifying must that be for a horse? But that's how they all started. I wonder if we'd have persevered with the oxen. I know there's camel racing that goes on, but I can't really see many camels doing dressage or going cross country or doing this sort of thing. That's what I'm really saying, is what an amazing species they are, that they allow us to do these things with them. Even putting them in a horse box or a trailer it's just incredible. They're all, try doing it with those other species, and I think you'd find it would be even harder than it is with horses. So I think it's really the respect for them, and I think you've got to have that respect. And the most important thing that I think I've learned over all of the years, and I see going slightly wrong, is that you've got to remember they're an animal and they are compliant. They're not a human. They don't understand things like us. They don't see things like us. They don't have our values. They don't live in our centrally heated houses. They're probably much better off actually in their stables, but for their health. But to compare them with humans, and like sometimes people do, they say, "Oh, they're my children, my babies." I think they're touching on a bit of a welfare issue actually, and I see it happening a little bit with dogs and all the rest of it. But let's stick into horses. I think you've got to understand what a horse is, what a horse wants to do. And that's not always the same as what humans want to do. So I hope I've sort of blue sky answers, but that's what reminds me every day that they are animals. They're incredibly compliant. They're fantastic, and we need to respect that.
Absolutely, and when you were talking about the breadth of how we involve horses, and we still have police horses, don't we? So I mean, they're very much, and they get into some situations, but obviously then animals use an equine assisted activity and therapy. I mean, it is extraordinary to see what horses can bring to our lives, and I think you raise a really good point about and I always like showing off that I can say the word anthropomorphism, but actually thinking horses are humans when they're not. And, you know, the growing challenge, forgive the pun, of equine obesity and equine weight, you know, because people over rug and other things, I think is a really good point to make. Sam, I'll come to you first in this next question. I mean, obviously, we've touched on this already, but, you know, science and research is happening all the time. And there are practices that we did 20, 30, 40 years ago that we possibly don't do with them now because our understanding has moved on. So how important it is for you to be flexible, open-minded, challenge the way you do things today in the light of new knowledge and new understanding that's coming out?
Well, I think it's essential. And listen, I'm very fortunate that in my current role involved helping the New Zealand eventers, is I do go and see a lot of different yards and different approaches, and there are so many different approaches to do. And I think you want to keep evolving. And one thing I perhaps should have spoken a bit about earlier was creating a really good environment for the horses. So over the years, I've managed to go around the world seeing different setups and different places. I've been lucky enough to live at the place where I live now for 15 years. And over that time, I've slowly changed my place to make it more horse friendly. I'm very lucky that I have a big barn. It's an old dairy. But I've done things like put in dual aspect, whereby I mean that the horses can all have their head and look inside the barn, but I also have a window at the back. And, you know, I do find the horses love that double aspect. And that's something that I picked up from a different yard. And so, yeah, almost backtracking a little, saying that the part of, you know, a good sort of management strategy is creating a good environment in the first place. You know, I'm very lucky, you know, obviously horses are social creatures. So I made a very conscious decision to have my yard very open so the horses can see each other very easily. And, you know, have rubber mattings and all that sort of thing. So yes. And so, yeah, picking up on that is, you know, I've sort of evolved slowly over the years of creating an environment from the horses that is beneficial for them. And I've picked it up from going to different places, from working with different people and throughout the world, and see how they do it around the world. So, you know, I think as a good horse person, if you can stay attuned to that, keep your eyes open, listen to what experts say, you know, because there is quite a lot of research now, scientific research done on conditioning horses and that sort of thing. And so I'm forever sort of reading up on that and just tweaking what I do. I haven't been going for it quite as long as Richard, but I have been doing it. I've been doing it.
No one has.
Yeah, I've been doing it a fair while, and it's just over the years you just pick up little things here and there, and I know it's always sort of a cliche of saying with horses you never stop learning, and I can genuinely say that you get to a level where you think you're really knowledgeable, and then something pops up and you'll learn something new. So I think in the equestrian world that you know. You want to keep an open mind and take on board what people say and transfer it to the environment for your horse.
Brilliant. Thank you. Richard, I'll come into you in a second on that. Just to say, do remember that the Q&A tab in Zoom, so please do put your questions in there for Sam and Richard. And if you see a question, there's some great questions in there already. And if you see a question that you like, please upvote it, because then we'll probably get to them first. And just to say thank you for everyone for joining us this evening. And it's lovely to see such a global audience, certainly from across Europe, including Hungary, Romania, France and Spain, and in Africa, in South Africa, and I think Senegal as well. So thank you very much for joining us. Richard, now I know, because we have spoken about many a research paper, that you are one who does keeps your ear very close to the ground about new evidence, new findings. How much has that impacted how you have changed your management practice over the years that you've been working with horses?
Well, basically, I love learning. I love learning about how horses work. I'm down to the cellular level now, so I'm interested in tendon cells, brain cells, and how the cells work and all the rest of it. In terms of the science, as you know, Roly, I try to read from the start to the finish, and then I make my mind up, and then I listen to the authors of their interpretation of it, and then think, well, hang on a minute, that isn't what they've actually written, or is it what they've written, or is what they would have liked to have written, but they couldn't, So I look at the science, I listen to what's said, and I sort of come to a judgment. But it's not really sometimes about that side of it. It's what can I learn that's going to help me manage my horses better, help my horses to learn better, which is the whole point of sport, if you like, equestrian sports. It's learning how horses learn and optimizing their performance and stuff. But yes, I don't just go with every science paper or the interpretation that journalist has or the authors have. I think
you're quite critical, aren't you? But critical in terms of actually really analysing it. But have you made some fairly significant changes over the last few years as a result of what you've learned?
Well, actually, funnily enough, it's hard to pinpoint that because we're learning every day, whether it's whether it's feeding or saddlery or bit design or bit materials or shoeing materials or all the time it's evolving. Whether we implement small changes all the time because I've read a science paper, probably not. But it's because, if you like, those the farriers, the vets, the saddlers have read that, and then together, we put that into the mishmash and see what little changes we're going to make. So I don't dash around every time I read a science paper and think, oh yeah, we must do that. I'm actually quite cynical of science, which is the whole point of it. And sometimes scientists forget that the whole point is to be cynical and check it out. Start on a negative, and it has to prove itself. Sadly, it doesn't work. A lot of science studies don't quite work like that. So I think it's good to be cynical because it tests it. And I know some of the researchers get a little bit frustrated with me, but if they let the papers and the studies speak for themselves, that's the sort of scientists I like. I like the ones that say, we don't know that, I don't know that, the study didn't show that. I really like that because it gives me a lot of confidence that it's not being trying to be oversold. As you say, the problem is, that I do have a very analytical, anal sort of brain. I mean, that's perhaps where the law...
I never said that.
Well, but I just want to come on to something Sam said, because I'm going to share now a problem that I have with one of the problems I have with my psychology. I love, as you know, Roly, you've been here, I love beautiful, tidy lawns and paddocks, and I've been known to be rolling in February to keep my paddocks, lovely and beautiful and all the rest of it. But I know, and you talk about science now, that is a conflict. It's a conflict for the soil structure to be, just rolling it so it looks nice, basically. For the grass, for the horses, and so that is a conflict, and I have to control myself by doing that. So I have an arrangement with myself now, and my staff are thrilled because I don't spend the whole time on the roller. The two paddocks that are that I can see that are near to the house, look spick and span, actually don't at the moment. They look absolutely poorly, but that's going to be fixed as soon as I can get on there. And the rest of it is not over manicured because, I know, and science has taught me, that is not the best for the horses. And really, I have to remind myself, and this is the point I'm coming to, that this place is for the horses. It isn't actually, my garden is to look nice, but the fields are not for me, they're for the horses. And final point, and this is where I'm coming to, because it might help some horse owners, I don't know what your stable's like, Sam, but our stables are not flash. This is an old farm, but they're big and they're airy and they're very sociable for the horses. And when sometimes I go into very flash stables and they're beautiful from the outside, I'm not saying this because I'm not bitter that I'm not a billionaire, obviously. But it's like the horse boxes. Everybody's big flash horse boxes. Everybody marvels in the living, at the cocktail cabinet and the glittery lights and all this. Actually, the first thing you want to do, turn right, get into the horse bar, see what it's like for the horses, and likewise back to the stables. What is it actually like for the horses in the stables? Because no horse is, you don't want to be, in a gilded cage, a gilded prison, and that brings me back to the paddock. So I think that is quite important, is reminding oneself what are the facilities like for the horses. So I hope I've answered your question. I know I've been around the houses a bit there.
No, I love it the way you do. I just, in terms of where people are from, I got told off the other day, you never talk about the UK. So we got lots of people from the UK joining us, well, from Lincoln, from Milton Keynes, from Poole, from Monmouth and Wales, and many other places. But I have to say, was it Juliana from, she's living in from Madrid. Cold, pouring rain and furious wind. That makes me feel a little better. I'm sorry for you, Juliana, for that. So it's like that in Spain, but the sun will be coming soon, and someone's joining us from Buckinghamshire and Somerset. Cold, wet, and muddy. So that's next door to you, Sam. So you're as you know, you're not alone. Sam, if I come to you now, thank you very much for your questions. Keep them coming, but it's great to see so many questions coming in. How do you mentioned health and happiness earlier, and I think it's, we can all understand what good health is and how we can sort of measure that. When we talk about a horse's happiness, and bearing in mind what Richard said earlier about not judging horses on a human level, judging horses on a horse level, how do you actually measure your horse's happiness?
Yeah, it's something that would be difficult to quantify. I'm very lucky that I've sort of been around horses all my life, and so I probably pick up subtle cues that other people don't. But obviously, as Richard said, there's nothing better coming into yard in the evening and hearing the horses happily eating hay. And it's all fairly quiet, but you hear them eating. And, I think just it's little signs like that and so again, in my stables, I very much tailor it for each horse, because I guess, like people, some horses don't get on with other horses, and when you have them stabled and in very open environments, some don't, and so we're forever sort of moving our horses around a little bit, so we end up having horses happy next to each other. And so I think just the cues of the horses, that they're happy, that they seem relaxed, and particularly if a horse is stressed, they won't lie down in a stable, or if they're a bit worried. And so to come in and see horses, and my horses do this quite regularly, having a nap at 11 o'clock in the morning is always reassuring that the horses are feeling comfortable in that environment. So I guess it's subtle cues, and it's something you can't quantify, but it's you sort of just go, well, I just get the feel. I get the feel, and yeah.
So obviously we talk so much about, Sam, about horsemanship, don't we know? And obviously that's something that develops with time and experience. But I think a key point of what you said there is you've got to know your horses. It's I mean, obviously unhappy horses, obvious for anyone to see, but often it's more subtle signs. But what you're saying is that if you know what's normal for your horse, it's much easier to identify what's abnormal.
Yeah, so the horses very much develop their own personalities, and they're all quite different. And our staff, we're always having sort of fun discussions that if our horse was a person, who would they be? and some vary from IT geeks to punk rockers. So it's the horses have quite different personalities, and as Richard alluded to before, it's really important that you get to know each of those horses, how they are individually, and because they are all quite different. So getting to know the horses and what's normal for those horses is really key to understanding them.
Brilliant, thank you, Sam. And so, Richard, for you, what does a happy horse mean to you? What does it look like to you?
I think you must have forgotten how I answered this the last time you asked me, Roly, because this is a bit problematic for me, because I am a bit anal with these terms, and a bit interested in science and law. So I can give you the background, and it's another thing that I am in conflict over. I was in the FEI committee that came up with the phrase "the happy athlete." It was a 3-day FEI meeting, very long agendas, lots on it, and this subject came up. Maybe I wasn't fully concentrating at this because I was perhaps more focusing on some of the technical matters, but I understood that we were trying to find for the marketing department or some department a phrase that they put it out to all the technical committees. Somebody came up and said, well, why don't we call it the happy athlete? And we all said, oh, that's marvellous, right? Fine, can we get on with the next point? And now, winding forward, I think it's a very good buzz phrase. It's a good marketing phrase, but scientifically, I'm struggling because I don't know how to measure happiness. I've looked at it a bit with psychologists into humans. What does it mean? Define happiness. So I think it's been a great phrase. I haven't got a better alternative, but I'm not sure that it's very accurate. So I don't know when my horses are happy. Like you said, Roly, I think I probably know when there's something bothering them, either from a health point of view or, like Sam said, because they don't like the horse next door, or sort of scenarios like this. So what I try to ask myself is this horse happy? Because I have no idea. I have no idea whether you're happy, Roly, or anybody listening is happy or would call themselves happy, whether we're talking about this moment or generally in life. But if my horses are contented and they're healthy and they get as much as possible what I can give them that horses want and not humans, because we've already intruded into their lives by putting a saddle and a bridle on and riding them, or even bringing them into a stable. So we've already intruded in there. So I think there's got to be, as much as possible, a payback to balance that. I don't really care what words you use, but I don't comfort myself by saying, oh, they're really happy, because I actually don't know that.
That's a really interesting point. Sam, the FEI obviously had a commission, Equine Ethics and Wellbeing Commission, which reported last November. And actually didn't talk, I don't remember talking at all about happy horses. But what it did talk about was being able to focus more about providing a good life for horses, and actually being able to identify and quantify and prove what a good life for horses is. Maybe Richard, should I come to you first? Does that resonate more with you than discussions around a happy horse and a happy athlete?
Yes, it does. And actually, I'm glad you brought that up, Roly, because I actually forgotten that, and I must remember that. I'm much more comfortable with that. And it also has a practical connotation, a good life horse. It means we've got to do something. I think it's a bit of a cop-out to say, oh, my horse is really happy and, he loves doing this. Well, actually, we don't know whether he does or he doesn't. We don't know whether he'd rather just, go in the field or sleep in the stable. We don't know because he can't speak. So I that's what bothers me a little bit about it. It's the misuse of it to comfort the human, if you like, or to excuse what we use them for, the horses. So yes, I'm much more comfortable with that.
And Sam, does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And because I think people get involved with horses because they love the horses, and on the whole. And so, yeah, I think it's in the interest and majority of people's desire that we want to keep our horses as good and as well as we can.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Listen, I was sitting here at 10 past the hour and thinking, God, we've got lots of time to fill, and now suddenly we're 10 to the hour, and we're getting. So one more question, because I did sort of talk about ethics earlier. So Sam, if I come to you, and ethics about whether we should do something, and obviously certainly ethics from from a competitive point of view is actually putting the horse first and not that win at all costs mentality. How do you put the ethics into your decision making around management and training, Sam?
Yeah, again, a lot of the sort of things we've discussed. I'm a big believer in, particularly on the training front, to taking your time when training horses. And if you take your time, it gives us more time to understand what the horses are going through and what they're understanding, and we can train them better for that. And like I was saying, that we do it, most of us would have done it because for the love of the horse, and that's our starting point. So I want to keep that and keep thinking about what the horses bring to us, and the joy, because it is such a unique sport. And so, yeah, we really want to do the best for the horses and keep the sport going.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Richard, in terms of ethics and your decision making around your management practices?
I think, big question to answer, but I think the area that I've been going into, and I mustn't go down a scientific rabbit hole here, but I'm interested in basically what we all do as riders, whether we realize it or not, is we're working with their neuromuscular systems, brain to their legs mostly, or their necks or their backs or whatever, because that's what sport is judged on. If you want the horse not to knock the pole down, its brain has to tell its legs, front legs and hind legs, to lift up high enough to where the pole is. So that's what I'm interested in. But it's what I'm getting to is, how do horses learn? And I think we are learning, I should say. We have learned and how this happens, and we are learning more about it every day. And I think this makes the training more ethical. And I think there's been big steps in that, and I want to see it go further. I want to learn more about it, obviously, and I want everybody else to learn about it. And maybe that's why I'm interested in the sort of scientific side, not because of the words or whatever, but just the basic principles of how it actually always, and why horses do lift their legs like we want them to do in a dressage or a jumping, or do these kind of things, or their neck function is how we do want it to be, or is not how we want it to be, and how we can influence that. And I think that's where we need to be going. We need to be going to ethical based training, and I think there is a direction of that moving towards that. Well, I know there is actually. I can actually tell you that there is, even just in everyday life, for that. I was thinking about the use of whips and all the rest of it. And I know I've told this story before, but I am of the age that when I went to school, when you did things wrong, and I did lots of things wrong, the standard penalty was that you were caned, and that was, society accepted that. I mean, in some respects, our parents paid fees to that. They accepted that was good for the child. That was very good. Now, of course, not only is that not accepted, it's actually, it's criminal. There's legislation to prevent that, and quite rightly. But because we have learned, scientists have learned, society won't accept it anymore, and there are better ways of educating children, not just academically, but in all sorts of ways. Now, where's the similarity going in horse sports? And I think, even in my life, I've seen that what was acceptable, 40, 50 years ago is not acceptable today. Yeah. And I think that's exactly where we are going with horse sports. And we've got to change. And the more we learn, the more ethical it is.
Brilliant, thank you. For a while there, I thought we'd joined a different webinar, actually, Richard.
No, don't worry, I wasn't. I was only leaving it on my school experiences.
No, it was great. And it's just lovely to think back, even in a short time, we've talked a lot about friends, freedom and forage, 3Fs is so often called in terms of providing our horses with a good life. And now we're talking that ethical based training and how horses learn. And that's been another area where we've learned a lot more relatively recently in how they learn. So thank you for that, Richard. That's absolutely brilliant. So now let's run through the questions that we've got, and we've got lots of questions. So thank you very much. Do keep coming through, and if you're on Zoom, then please do upvote questions if you like them. So Sam, I'll start with you. Therese has asked, great to hear about Turnout from both of you. But how important is it that they're friends for horses in the paddock? Would you turn your competition horses out with other horses?
So, two parts to this answer is during the competition season that all my horses are shod all round. And so I don't turn them out with other horses because of the fear that they might kick each other. And when they have shoes on, it can be quite catastrophic. But saying that, I have a rule that all horses must be turned out next to another horse. So on my property, the fields are, I've sort of made them a bit smaller so they have individual turnout. But yeah, there's a rule they always have to be next to another horse, and that's rule. But then also having said that, during the winter and or the off season, I will quite often take all the shoes off my horses and turn them out as a group. So basically, in the answer to that is it depends on the time of year. So when they're having a break from the competitions, I will put them out as a group and let them just be horses. But during the season, because they've got shoes on and the fear of them kicking each other, that they're turned out individually, but alongside other horses.
And when you're turning them out in the winter or when they're unshod, I mean, are you putting the boys and girls, the geldings and the mares together separately, or how do you have any? Because you mentioned earlier, some horses are just a bit grumpy.
Yeah. So again, you sort of get to know them. I tend to keep the geldings with the geldings and the mares with the mares, but again, it just depends on where I can do, because usually I try and turn out sort of October time and that the ground is okay, but when it gets a bit wet, it depends on where they can go. It sounds like I should send them up to Richard's place by the sounds of it.
No, we can't do it anymore.
Yeah. You can put them in his front garden. There's plenty of space there.
That
Not
nice
on my lawn.
Richard, normally I don't ask both questions, but I think this is quite a key question. What do you do? I mean, are you turning horses out, and are you turning them out with others if you are?
Exactly the same answer as Sam. No, if they don't have hind shoes on, it's great for them to go out together, and we definitely have some horses that are actually fine. Geldings go out with geldings and so on. But once they have hind shoes on, I'm afraid it's not what I want. But we have to be very careful in that situation.
Yeah.
Generally, we don't. That doesn't mean we never do, but generally we don't.
But as we were talking about earlier, it's just important to get this balance, and the fact that both of you, as soon as you can, are actually putting them out together sounds a really positive thing.
If they didn't have hind shoes on, I have no hesitation about it. And like Sam, our horses, we've got lots of fairly small turnout paddocks, so always the horses go out so they can, scratch each other over the fence and all the rest of it. And we also have a turnout pen, if you want, when the horses have, had an injury or they're on controlled exercise, that sort of thing. And that pen, so we turn a horse out in that pen and another horse in the paddock, if you like. So, they're almost together, but not quite. Brilliant.
Thank you, Richard. Sam, I've just seen what Jane's question, there's two different Janes, and the first Jane, I've seen what the second Jane's asking, so I'm going to ask the first Jane to you, Sam. If you have a horse showing quite strong resistance to a particular aspect of schooling, at what point would you get the horse checked out by a vet or other allied professional?
Yeah, I mean, my horses are very lucky that we have lots of vets and physios and farriers always in the yard. So it's something we'd do fairly quickly. I'm lucky I've been around horses for quite a long time, and so sometimes the horses can misbehave because it's something physical, and other times it can be from a lack of understanding. So as I sort of alluded to before, if you're patient in your training, and you can usually decide whether you feel it's something physical or whether it's an understanding issue. So I usually do it sooner rather than later, because if I'm unsure, I'd like to rule out anything that could be physical.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. So the second Jane, or maybe the first Jane, and is Jane Baker. My only question, this is to you, Richard, with all the media about hyperflexion in dressage, tongue ties in racing, and all the other issues at the moment, it's not looking good for us using horses in sport. You've got 30 seconds to answer this. What is your answer to this?
Actually, quite simple. That basically the big point is this, and people seem to forget this. While horses are in regulated sport, it doesn't matter it's racing or dressage, eventing, whatever. In other words, they're affiliated, the members of a body. And in our case, it's to the FEI and then to the national federations. Those horses get much more protection by observation of by stewards, by judges, by vets, by everybody, because there's rules and regulations. Once horses are in an unregulated activity, and like Sam, I've also travelled around the world and I've watched horses in certain towns piaffing for more than 100 steps in towns and fiestas and all sorts of things. And there's no regulation. So nobody can check the medications they're on or they're not on, or there's no anti-doping, there's nothing. So I'd much rather have horses and riders in a regulated environment with rules, a set of rules, and with sanctions and with penalties, because at least you've got jurisdiction over them. When you haven't got jurisdiction, those horses are going to suffer a lot more. So sure, and the last bit about this is you're reading about the rule breakers. Well, we think they've broken the rules. I should be careful here, because a lot of these are still under investigation, and I'm obviously a believer in the rule of justice and everybody allowing a fair hearing. And so because people are suspended or run into investigation, I don't know anything about those cases. I'm not part of the investigation, and I'm pretty sure nobody else on this panel is, well, not for the headline ones anyway. So let's wait until the investigation process has come out, and then if they've done something wrong, they should be punished and sanctioned. And let's not forget, it isn't just the FEI and the internal governing bodies that can give these sanctions. It's laws. There are legislation on animal welfare. They apply to horses. They are applied to horses, and they should be applied to, to anybody that abuses horses. So I hope I've done that in 30 seconds, but I probably haven't.
That was very comprehensive. It was a great question. Thank you, Jane. Sam, I mean, this is obviously very much, lots of social media activity around this, and an increasing focus. Which many would applaud, the fact that to make sure that horses have a good as life as possible within horse sport and all other areas. Do you have any thoughts around the future for horse sport given the current media headlines?
Yeah, obviously the question world is taking a good look at itself. But one thing that reassures me a little bit, I know in the UK, I think it's 5 out of the top most visited sports in the UK are equestrian events, and that's sort of badminton and Burley. I know they get over 160,000 spectators for those competitions, and obviously there's some race meetings that get huge crowds. So yes, although we need to look at ourselves, I do take comfort that it's so well supported. So people vote with their feet, and they spend money to come to these events, whereas it's a bit easier to put a comment on social media. So yes, we need to be very careful, but in some respects, the sport is still still very strong.
Brilliant.
Roly,
Thank
could I just quickly come back on it, because I think it's such an important question
Yeah.
that's been raised at the moment. I think I totally agree with Sam. Like I've said, I believe in the proper investigations. I don't believe in the court of social media. I mean, social media is a monster, basically. It can do some good stuff and it can be actually quite good for education. But other than that, it's completely unregulated, and that's not how I want horses to be. So the other thing to just say is, obviously, was it Jade or Jane? I couldn't fully hear. But anyway, consider the proportionality here. And this is what I don't know, and this is what the governing bodies could provide me with and everybody with. How many dressage rounds were there, tests performed last week around the world? How many eventing, obviously it's just getting going. But the point I'm trying to make is, how many people are complying with these regulations and are staying within the regulations and are not, misusing horses or riding too harshly, compared to those that are not? And it's a very small percentage. And that's why social media, you cannot change rules according to social media, because you need some evidence, and if you look at the evidence, it's a minute percentage. That's not to say that, as you know, the whole basis of World Horse Welfare is about education, and I'm not talking about sports, equestrian sports now. I'm talking about handling horses and donkeys and ponies for work and in very poor areas of the world, and that's about education. So when we don't know whether people are broken the rules for bad riding, but I don't know what the rules are for bad riding, but they should be penalised because they don't get the marks. It doesn't bring success. Now, if there's been a bit of a break in the link there, and there might well have been, I think, from what I've sort of seen, then let's educate. Let's recalibrate judging, where we put weights on the dressage judging on the marks. Let's do that. It's not that difficult to do. And let's educate riders that there are alternative ways of doing this. And it's that fine balance between putting, sporting ego, finding the line and not stepping over it. But I don't think everybody that steps over that line in that heat of that moment is a criminal and a terrible person. I think, I've had plenty of speeding fines, and I'm talking about being 3 miles over the speeding limit, but it doesn't mean that I'm not an irresponsible driver. And I think the same applies to errors of riding, and I think you should be sanctioned for it and you should learn from it. And we should educate, because that's how we're going to help horses.
Brilliant, Richard, thank you. Sam, Marga's asked, how do you think the perception of the impact of nutrition on sport horse health, aside from performance, has evolved in recent years? And she's thinking about issues such as weight management, disease prevention, potential doping implications from feed and supplements.
Yeah, so feed and supplements, it's an area that in the last sort of 10 or 15 years is grown massively. There's a lot of science behind it, and I know that the bigger feed companies are very rigorous in dope testing, because that's a whole minefield in itself. But it's easy for a horse to get a naturally occurring prohibited substance into their feed. But like I said, that's another area. But the change in feed and diet's been huge, and I'm very lucky. I do get the feed company that I work with will come and inspect and actually weigh my horses twice a year, and then I know, particularly in the racing game, that the horses will have an ideal racing weight. I haven't gone quite into that detail with my eventers, but I do know some that do that. So it's an area that there's a lot of information now, and all the feed companies on the whole are very good at giving advice and helping us on that front. So it's an area that's really grown, because I guess at the end of the day, that the horses are the true athletes, and you need, from my sort of eventing and performance perspective, is they need to be fueled correctly. and have everything that they need. And the feed companies these days are very good at helping in that front.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Richard, Janice has asked, and picking up what we talked about almost right at the beginning about the importance of structure in the day, and the daily routines that you both have. But Janice has asked, how do you manage to keep that daily routine on competition days and at events?
Very, very good question, Janice. Well done. And I was thinking about it as we were talking about it earlier. So we, especially in dressage, we compete in the indoors, and that can be very late at night, or seems quite late at night, 9 o'clock. You could get a 10 o'clock start time. So although at home we have a general routine, but well, it's easy for me to say that. My wife would not say that, because my day is always, no 2 days are the same. So in fact, although I get a lot of criticism for that, I think it's actually quite helpful for the horses that sometimes I can only be free to work my horses in the afternoon and not in the mornings when most we'd like to work them. And that can be that even for professional yards, you're going to a show in the morning, then you get back and then you ride the other horses. So I think the times of feeding in principle don't change, and that's fairly easy to work that around at a show. I do think it's quite good for the horses to have a variation in terms of work, and again, it comes back to conditioning the brain, and the brain you've got to know how the brain is going to function at night as opposed to in the morning, because like our brains are different for different reasons. So are horses. So good question, and you have, in my view. So when we know that we're going to be competing at night, we will the last few days work at, not send at night, but towards that time of the day. So yeah, really good question.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. Sam, and Richard, you might want to comment on this as well, but obviously there's about the age of horses, and they continue to grow until they're 7, but we're often starting to ride them and train them much earlier than that, when obviously everything is still developing. What are your thoughts around the age of horses and when we first start riding and training them?
Again, I read some research. It might be a little bit dated now, but I'm quite a believer in trying to get it to start conditioning a horse fairly young in their career, so that they get used to the rigors of what they've got to face. Now with a younger horse, it would be very light work and get bigger and bigger. The workload would increase as the horse gets older. So I'm actually fairly pro breaking them in, and from a sport horse point of view, fairly young, sort of 2 or 3, and then but being very gentle, have them in and out. When I say in and out, I mean in and out of work. Because obviously your horses will have various growth spurts, but I from my point of view, I'm quite keen in starting conditioning and getting the horses accustomed to what they'll be doing in the future. But there'd be something I'd be open to if there's any other research on it.
Brilliant. And so that's obviously starting early, but taking it very steadily.
Slowly, take your time.
Yeah. Question from Facebook, Richard. What horse or horses have had an impact on how you manage, had the biggest impact on how you've managed or trained your horses over the years? Any individual personality that comes to mind that has sort of driven you to change, or?
All I can say is all of them. They've all been unique. They've all been individual. Like I said, the one thing they've all had is 4 legs, a tail, a head, and a neck, and some teeth. And but the difference is their brain function. And I'm sorry to keep harping on about it. That's what makes them unique. It's what makes us unique as well. And okay, they might have slightly longer legs or shorter neck or longer neck and all the rest of it. But the brain's the big thing. And they've all been different. They've all had challenges, what I see as challenges, and I've learned from all of them. And the thing is, I love learning from all of them. So I know that it perhaps, has stopped me being as successful as I could have dreamed of being, and it's definitely in the last few years has done that. But it's actually the reason I keep going, because it's what I love doing. And, I accept that perhaps those horses I don't think are the right level to ride everything out of them. But I've sort of, as I've got older, changed my competitive aims. I won't say they've got less, because literally before I put my arse in the saddle, there I'm as competitive as anybody. But I am very happy to develop the horse and to take it through. And I'm not imposing that on anybody else, but that's just how it is for me. So I can't give you a name because it would be wrong. They've all. Right. I've learned from all of them, and I hope I carry on learning from them.
Love it. Thank you, Richard. Really great to hear. And I haven't just put this in here. This is a genuine comment from Teresa, Sam, that she bought a horse from you over 10 years ago. The horse has the best temperament thanks to Sam's early training of this horse for behaviour, performance, and his early training. It was a lasting legacy for a professional like Sam. So there you go. Wonderful. And Teresa, thank you very much for sharing that. But Gabriella's asked Sam about the challenges of travel routine, especially long road journeys, and she's also asked about long air journeys going across time zones. How do you ensure their welfare when you're going, to the Tokyo Olympics or whatever it be?
Yeah, so a couple of things is so when they're traveling by air, I mean, horses travel incredibly well, and as you can imagine, that it's not cheap to fly horses, and so because of that, they're very well cared for. And I know on the traveling into Europe and that sort of thing from the UK, I was always I have a bit of a rule where I try and get my horses off the horse box every 6 hours to get their heads down, have a little graze, and move their legs. And so yeah, there are sort of various routines you're getting. I'd have to say, and this is a bit of a sideshow, but Brexit has been a bit of a nightmare to travel horses into Europe now. So although there's sort of legislation that's sort of designed for the welfare, it's actually not in their interest with all the Brexit, but that's a sideshow. But getting back to the flying, I mean, the horses travel incredibly well. And when we fly them abroad, we usually try and get the horses in there sort of 5 or 6 days before a competition, give them a day or two easy to settle in, and then do the competition and get them out fairly quickly. As you can imagine, that if we were to keep the horses there for a longer time, particularly with me being Australian, having flown some horses up from the Southern Hemisphere, you suddenly find it takes quite a while for them to adjust because of the different seasons and obviously the horses' coats and various things like that. But from the competitive perspective, we try and get them in and out fairly quickly. And I'd have to say the horses cope really, really well. And when you're in that environment, there's fantastic veterinary care that monitor the horses very, 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 very closely.
Brilliant. Sam, thank you. I love it. And early contender for understatement of the year, Brexit has been a bit of a nightmare to get horses. Love it. Listen, we are running out of time, so we're going to move to a little quick fire round. So if you can keep the answers as short as you can, team, that would be brilliant. So question on Facebook, Richard, do you think social stabling and stabling that allows horse-to-horse contact is becoming more popular on competition yards?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, we've got a bit of a halfway house that we've got big pens, I mean, huge pens. And we used to have it that they could touch their noses over. To be honest, we found there was a lot of playing, fighting, I don't know what you want to call it. But anyway, we had quite a lot of interest. So we've actually put some grids up there, but it stopped the silly business, but they still have got interaction and they still actually can make contact with each other.
Brilliant. Janine's asked Sam, what are your thoughts and experiences of a handling of sales of sport horses, and do you think there should be a standard that should be encouraged?
Selling sport horses is it's particularly when it comes to price and that sort of thing, is how long's a piece of string. but I guess there could be some regulations brought into conduct of some people. But yeah, it's difficult because horses will behave differently in different environments too. So that can be tricky to gauge.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Richard, I just lost it. Rachel's asked, how do you get equestrian organisations to train young people to learn that horses are animals and not humans and don't think, behave and work physiologically like us?
Well, are you sure this is a short answer?
This is a short answer question.
That's a really, really great question. And it is a conflict in national governing bodies, actually, because on the one hand, we've been talking about the court of social opinion or social media. On the one hand, you need to identify with non-horsey people and use words like, the happy athlete and, cuddle, all the soft, cuddly stuff. So you've got to do that. But on the other hand, you've got to balance exactly the point you're making there, that they are animals, and there's a bit of a disconnect, I think, there. So I think you have to understand the difficulties for the governing bodies, which I do understand from the marketing side, which is obviously very important, to the reality side, and we've got to try to walk that line.
Brilliant. Thank you, Richard. Very well answered in such a short time. Sam, a question from Facebook. How do you work with your vets, farriers and other allied professionals to treat the whole horse and focus on preventative care?
So I guess if we're to look at it in almost terms of business, is I'm the CEO and I bring all the experts in, and quite often there'll be dialogues between vets and farriers and that sort of thing. And so I guess part of my role as the rider or trainer is putting all the information together and trying to bring the professionals together and deciding, what's relevant and what's not. So, yeah, a bit like a business.
Richard, sorry, Sam. A question from Facebook. Do you think the more extreme weather we're experiencing, particularly in the UK, will lead to more yards changing infrastructure to include all-weather turnout areas?
Is this to me?
Yeah.
Probably will. I'm not very keen on them, or it wouldn't be that they're not my preference. Obviously, if they were, we'd have done that ages ago, and then I could have looked at my pristine paddocks. I think I like horses to put their heads down and graze grass and look for grass and move around in paddocks. And what I see a lot of the sand paddocks are very common in European stables. I'm not sure that it does. I mean, it gets the horses into the fresh air, but that's about all. I mean, and they can have a roll, and I'm not. So I'm saying they're better than being in the stable, but not for me. But it's easy. You've got to be practical, and I'd go for that if it's not practical to turn them in fields. So I'd rather have them in those than in stables.
Brilliant. Sam, Janice has asked, would it be true to say that you choose horses that are happy for the disciplines? She has put happy in for the disciplines you are following. That is, they show a positive disposition towards the work and appear to like it.
Yeah, you definitely get horses that enjoy, like and go better in various disciplines. So and they show aptitudes toward it. So yeah, very much so.
Brilliant. Catalin's asked, Richard, what do you do with your old and retired horses?
They're here. Actually, well, we have two here, and they're actually both owned by the same person in America. And these have got to be quick questions, but when Bubbling's mother, Balazar Royale, retired after the Athens Olympics, I said to the owner, who has beautiful facilities in America, I'm sure you want to have her there and breed for her. And the owner said, who is an absolute horse woman, and she said, absolutely not. The climate here is not suitable. She's been brought up in the UK. I'd like her to stay there. And she did. And so but now these other two horses are also belonging to her. So we look after them here.
That wasn't the original Athens Olympics. That was the 2004 Athens Olympics.
Not the original ones. Yeah, no.
Just thought it worth checking. And Alice has asked, Sam, do your horses suffer from stomach ulcers? And in which case, what do you think is the cause?
So yeah, stomach ulcers are one of those things that are quite interesting, and it's something that's sort of newish on the veterinary front. I've found that some horses that you thought would be real candidates for stomach ulcers don't have them, and other horses that you think are okay, but you've got the vet to check to be safe, have had them. So you do get some fairly classic cases where they have stomach ulcers. Obviously, would look into diet related things, but it's sort of an area that is growing definitely on the veterinary front, and various different treatments. In the past, we only gave one treatment, but now they can really specialise on stomach ulcer treatment.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you both. You've answered so many questions and provided some brilliant answers. I will come to you both in a second just for key take-home messages. Just remember, we've got one more webinar on this series on Wednesday the 10th, which is looking at the latest development in equine grass sickness research with a team from the University of Edinburgh and the Morden Research Institute, supported by the Equine Grass Sickness Fund. We've put a sign up for that, so you can sign up for that now. If you've got ideas for us webinars starting in the winter of this coming year, then please do email us on education@worldhorsewelfare.org. And now I'll come to you, Sam. And what would be, we've discussed a lot over the last hour and a half or so. What would be your key take-home message or messages?
Yeah, I guess sort of two things really is one, just try and create as good an environment for your horse as you can in the situation that you find yourself in. So Richard and I are lucky we're both professionals, and our properties are set up for that. So I realise not everyone's in that situation, but there are little things you can do to really aid the horse. And then from a performance point of view and a training point of view, I'd just say don't rush, don't rush yourself, don't rush your horse, don't be in a hurry, because if you take your time, you think things through better, and it's better in the long run, and then suddenly you'll actually sometimes find you get yourself there quite quickly.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sam. Richard?
Sam had 2, and of course I've got 4. So I'm going to make it quick. You know me, Roly. So first one is, and this is a hard one, if you're interested in equestrian sports, try not to put your own sort of ego and ambitions before your horse's interest. I know that's hard to do, but that's the first thing I would ask. Second point is that we've just discussed tonight is, remember your horse is not a human. Don't treat it like a human. It's not your baby, it's not your child. If you really are unconvinced about what I'm telling you here, when you go for a lesson or when you go to a show, are you sure it's not going to be your horse that's driving back and you're going to be tied up eating the hay net in the back? Be careful what you wish for. So don't treat him like a human. Third thing is just enjoy your horses, enjoy managing your horses, looking after them. I know everybody does. That's why you're on this webinar. Now we're coming to the fourth point is enjoy learning. And again, obviously you do, because you're on this point, but enjoy learning more about them. And then I think we can go back to your point, Roly, at the beginning about whether it's ethical what we do, should we do it? I think if we learn more about them, learn how they function, how their minds work, and what their interests are, then I think we're going in the right direction.
Listen, Richard and Sam, thank you so much. Today has been about a day in the life of sport horse, and I think you've both given us so much to think about, starting from the very beginning about the importance of structure and the importance of variety. We've covered off the 3 Fs of friends, freedom and forage, the importance of learning theory, the importance of taking time and enjoying the horses we are lucky to have around us. And don't obviously anthropomorphize that horses are horses and people are people. And we've also learned that you can't say swelling on Richard's yard. Who knew? But listen, thank you so much to you both. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us for this webinar. Remember that all of this will be available on our education YouTube channel, as are all our other webinars. And we'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks' time, Wednesday the 10th of April, when the focus will be on equine grass sickness. Thank you very much.